On April 5th, Jeff Gladney was arrested with third-degree assault charges. Now, Jeff Gladney, 31st overall draft pick in 2020 out of TCU by the Minnesota Vikings, where the Vikings traded down with the San Francisco 49ers, who traded up to draft Brandon Ayuk, which seems like a good move for the 49ers. And for the Vikings, now knowing what we know today, was not a good move for the Vikings. As could you imagine if the Vikings actually drafted Antoine Winfield or Jeremy Chin or someone else as a defensive back instead of Jeff Gladney? Now, Jeff Gladney, of course, he just had his rookie season, and you don't want to judge people based off of the rookie seasons, but knowing what we know today, there's a possibility this guy will not be back. With this third-degree assault charges, there is a possibility Jeff Gladney will never be back in the NFL, period, let alone with the Minnesota Vikings. So if we take a look at this, Jeff Gladney was arrested April 5th, where he turned himself into the Dallas County Police on a $10,000 bond on a charge of third-degree family of violent assault. This incident took place April 2nd, and the warrant was placed on April 2nd. This was on a 22-year-old woman with a closed fist choking and dragging her outside their vehicle. Gladney fled the scene before the officers arrived and can face up to 2 to 10 years in prison if convicted. 2 to 10 years. Now, with the money that Jeff Gladney has, I would expect that he would get a private lawyer and a good attorney. So I wouldn't expect it to be a full 10 years, but still, if he's convicted, 2 years in prison, that's 2 years without Jeff Gladney, and I wouldn't expect him to be in the NFL after those 2 years. So this is another loss for the Vikings. I'm going to say it right now. I don't think that Jeff Gladney will be back with the Minnesota Vikings this upcoming 2021 season, where defense was a huge focus, especially at the cornerback position this offseason. And not only this offseason, but every other offseason that the Vikings have had, Mike Zimmer has focused solely on the cornerback position. Since Mike Zimmer has been a head coach with the Minnesota Vikings in 2014, he's drafted 3 corners in the first round, and a lot more in day 2 and day 3 after that. Those 3 corners were Trey Waynes, that was Mike Hughes, and now Jeff Gladney. All 3 of which don't look like first-round talent at all. Now, Trey Waynes, yes, when he's healthy, he does look pretty good. Mike Hughes, we don't even know because he's never healthy. And then now we have Jeff Gladney, who once again did suffer with some injuries, and we can't judge someone based off of their rookie season. As a rookie, he didn't perform as good as Cameron Dantzler did, who was drafted in the 3rd round, we'll say. Because I don't like judging corners based off of the rookie season. There's only one position in the NFL that I like judging off of the rookie season, and that is running back. Because when you're a running back and it's your rookie season, you are young, you are fully healthy, you're honestly in your prime as a running back, as a starter. So that's why the running back position is the only position I like grading off of the rookie season, as the rest of them you need a lot more development into the NFL. So although Jeff Gladney was a first-round draft pick in 2020, he wasn't even expected to be a starter in 2021. Our starting 3 corners was going to be Cameron Dantzler as a left corner, Patrick Peterson as a right corner, and Mackenzie Alexander inside the slot or as a nickel. So why is this such a big loss? It's such a big loss because of the amount of injuries we have at the corner position. It's such a big loss because this was a first-round draft pick who now is looking like another bust that we can add to our list of players that Mike Zimmer drafted who have not worked in the NFL. That's why this is such a big loss. Patrick Peterson, Cameron Dantzler, and Mackenzie Alexander all have had injuries in the last 2 seasons. Now, Mackenzie Alexander, he's probably our most healthy corner when you look at it. Obviously, Vikings really focused on cornerback in the 2020 draft, and it was a big need in the 2020 offseason. It was the biggest need, where the Vikings drafted Jeff Gladney, they drafted Cameron Dantzler, and they drafted Harrison Hand. Now, you look at already so far this 2021 offseason, Vikings have brought back Mackenzie Alexander and have signed Patrick Peterson. So Vikings have just been focusing on corner simply because of the amount of injuries we have at the cornerback position. Vikings are fine without Jeff Gladney as long as these corners can stay healthy. And we know this is not going to happen because they are all injury prone. Also, we have Mike Hughes, who Mike Hughes is another player on this Vikings depth chart who we aren't focusing on because we know he's going to get injured. Mike Hughes is a player who, honestly, if he stayed healthy, he could be great. Vikings should honestly, and this is my opinion, honestly start Mike Hughes this 2021 season, start him at right corner over Patrick Peterson. And the reason for that is we can rely on Patrick Peterson as a backup. Yes, he's getting paid all this money, but just give Mike Hughes another chance. This is your last season. This is the last season Mike Hughes has. After this, he is under contract for one more year, but he's going to get cut as they did restructure his contract, and it wouldn't make sense to pay him in 2022. This is Mike Hughes' last season, and just see what he can do. If he doesn't look good, you have Patrick Peterson, who Patrick Peterson right now is not as good on man coverage as he was obviously 5 years ago. But once again, you can use him as a zone corner, and I think he's a pretty good signing when you look at it, what we see today. And then obviously Mackenzie Alexander inside the slot, who has played inside the slot and as a nickel with the Vikings before and looks perfectly fine. He also had a very good season with the Bengals last year. So that was another very good move. In the last year, the Vikings have drafted Jeff Gladney, Cameron Dantzler, and Harrison Hand. On top of that, they've cut Mark Fields and Holton Hill and rotated in a bunch of practice squad guys. There is so many moves the Vikings are making at corner, and nothing seems to go our way. So hopefully this offseason, where the Vikings signed Patrick Peterson, Mackenzie Alexander, and restructured Mike Hughes' contract, this might be a difference maker. Because if Jeff Gladney is not coming back with the Vikings, it's good to know that Cameron Dantzler is on our team. It's good to know that we've signed Patrick Peterson. This is such a relief where even with the loss of Jeff Gladney that I'm assuming will happen, Vikings are still better at corner this year than they were last year. They're still better at corner, and that's because of how bad the corners were last year. And yes, when I say that they were bad, it has to do with lack of experience. It doesn't have to do with the fact that I'm calling Cameron Dantzler and Jeff Gladney bad. No, I think they were very good for rookie corners, but it was lack of experience that held the Vikings secondary back in the 2020 season. And it was injuries on the linebacker position and injuries on the defensive line that held the Vikings back the 2020 season and was a big part of the biggest part on why the Vikings were unsuccessful last year. And it all has to do with defense. And this is why they've solely focused on defense so far this offseason, which honestly, I'm not saying that is a good thing, as I think the Vikings should have focused more on offensive line. But once again, they've solely focused on defense, moved all of this cap to the defensive side of the ball, and hopefully it works out. Now, with the loss of Jeff Gladney, I can't say that I'm very comfortable with the way this cornerback group is looking, but I am a lot more comfortable than I was 1 year ago. So there's a lot of depth on this cornerback position, as we do have Chris Boyd, as we do have Harrison Hand, and there's players you can rotate in. I just don't want to see a bunch of practice squad guys coming back in. Last year, I saw far too many guys I've never heard of that the Vikings signed from some team's practice squad who just didn't work out at all. And for that reason, Vikings, once again, are going to focus on defensive back this 2020 draft, or 2021 draft. Primarily on day 3, I'd say, as the Vikings don't have a second-round draft pick, and it wouldn't really make sense to draft a defensive back in the first round, unless if you're drafting Caleb Farley, it wouldn't make much sense to draft a defensive back at the 14th overall pick. And I think the Vikings should focus on defensive back in the 3rd round, where honestly, I know that they will, because this is what Mike Zimmer does. This is what Rick Spielman does. They will focus on defensive back in the day 3 of this 2021 draft, drafting safeties and cornerbacks. Let me know what y'all think.